What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be discussing another film from Mexico that I recommend. This is actually my first entry into Mexican cinema from the Criterion collection. We're discussing Canoa A Shameful Memory, released in 1976. This film is basically on the San Miguel Massacre, which happened in Mexico in 1968. 1968 was a politically tumultuous year for many countries around the world, and Mexico was no exception. You had the student movements going on in Mexico, and at the same time, not too long before this, around the same time, you had the Summer Olympics going on in Mexico City. One of the main things or main themes of the protests of the student movement in Mexico was, why is the government spending so much money on these Olympics when so much more can be done to help the citizens and the youth of Mexico? I know there's other things which is what caused the student movement, but that's one of the main themes of the student movement in Mexico. But anyways, this film takes place around that time in 1968, and the film follows some university students who make a trip to San Miguel, the village of San Miguel Canoa. And in that village, the townspeople have basically been manipulated is a better term, by a corrupt Catholic priest who is seeking ever more control in that local community, basically paying off the mayor, police force, and manipulating the people of that village, basically making everybody think that any outsiders who visit this town cannot be trusted. They may be communist agents or sympathizers who are looking to start a guerrilla war in Mexico, and they need to be stopped. This is basically what happens when our college employees, college students, college employees make their way to this town on a hiking trip. They notice that they're getting side eyes, and they don't feel welcome, and eventually. This was basically the straw that broke the camel's back when these students, college employees, ventured to this town. The town reaches a boiling point, is what I'm trying to say. The townspeople basically they basically lynch the students who were visiting this town. It's a very hard watch, but it's very I think it's very interesting and very important to watch a film like this, because it basically shows that just how easily a community can be manipulated by one person who has some form of authority. That is basically the message of this film. Again, this is a Criterion Collection release. I'm not sure exactly when this version was released, but of course, as with all Criterion Collection DVDs, it comes with a booklet with film essays discussing the impact of the film, the cast, and I just wanted to read a brief excerpt from the essay by film essayist, film reviewer Fernanda Solorzano. Excuse me for butchering the name. So, in the scene from Canoa A Shameful Memory, 5 young people sit on the floor of an adobe house, listening to local gossip from their host, a peasant named Lucas. Outside, torrential rain lashes in the small town of San Miguel Canoa, located just a few kilometers from the city of Puebla in central Mexico. The youths are employees of the University of Puebla and avid mountaineers. That evening, they are passing through Canoa on their way to climb the volcano. Lucas speaks poorly of the town priest, calling him a scheming and corrupt man who manipulates his parishioners. The young men listen with interest until they are distracted by the chiming of a bell, something that sounds like gunshots. Are those firecrackers? One asks. Lucas continues the story, recounting anecdotes about the outsiders who were assassinated by each other by the order of the priest. We hear the sound of gathering crowd and a woman's voice yelling, "The outlaws are here." From a shot inside of the house, we cut to a scene outside the town church. A mob armed with machetes and sticks has assembled to search out the intruders. Back at Lucas's house, the pale faces of the youths make it plain they have realized that they are the outlaws. Now we see the angry mob running towards the house. The scene that follows there is the fate of the 5 mountaineers at the hands of a crowd blinded by wrath. These harsh scenes have taken their place in Mexican cinema history. So again, the Canoa's ominous settings and unreliable narrators will be enough to make it a masterpiece of the suspense and horror genres. Its sense of anxiety, which reaches the peak in the scene described above, is augmented by the sinister act of the lynchings depicted in Canoa, actually took place on September 14th of 1968, just 2 weeks before the Tatlico Massacre. Excuse me if I mispronounced Tatlico. And one of the most violent and widely condemned episodes of the 20th century in Mexico. On October 2nd, the Mexican army suppressed a political demonstration by a group of students and others at Tatlico, Mexico City. Soldiers disguised as civilians infiltrated the demonstration and began shooting from a balcony of a nearby building. According to student movement's accounts, the military killed over 300 people, while the government acknowledged the deaths of only a handful. Canoa, which frequently uses a false documentary format, mentions the dates on which the events it depicts in both Canoa and Puebla, where news arriving from Mexico City, occurred. Given those dates are so close that to the Tatlico Massacre, which lives in infamy in the minds of viewers familiar with Mexican history. So again, that's just a little excerpt from the little booklet that comes with the film. Again, I highly recommend this, especially if you're interested in the history of Mexican cinema. Again, this was my first entry endeavor into Mexican cinema. And again, I highly recommend it. Let me read the back of this so you can get a fully grasp the idea and the background of this film. Again, this is one of Mexico's most highly regarded works of political cinema. Again, Canoa, A Shameful Memory, reimagines a real-life incident that had occurred just only 8 years before the release of this film, where a group of urban university employees on a hiking trip were viciously attacked by residents of the village of San Miguel Canoa, who had been manipulated by a corrupt priest into believing the travelers were communist revolutionaries. Directed by Felipe Casals, adopts a gritty documentary style to narrate the events in Canoa while referencing the climate of political repression that will lead to the massacre of student protesters in Mexico City shortly thereafter. The resulting film is a daring commentary on ideological manipulation, religious fanaticism, and mass violence, as well as a visceral expression of horror. This movie also comes with a 4K digital transfer supervised by director Felipe Casals, and it also has an introduction by the filmmaker Guillermo del Toro, excuse me for mispronouncing the name, and an interview between the filmmaker Alfonso Cuarón, who I believe directed Y Tu Mama También, love that film, and Casals. So he interviewed the director of this film. Also comes with the trailer of the film, the original trailer, and of course an English subtitled edition, and of course the essay which I just read an excerpt from you all, written by film critic Fernanda Solórzano. Again, this film was released in 1976. It is 115 minutes long, and of course it is in Spanish, but it has English subtitles. Again, I highly recommend this film. A very important film that discusses a very important part of Mexican history. Thank you so much for watching. Continue to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next episode of Film Recommendations by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching.